And Rand Paul get into it, and he gets exposed by Ryan Grimm. Also, where the heck has Vin been this entire time? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
And you ain't black.
The first time ever any...
What are you people?
We're Americans. We are Americans indeed. My name is Vin. I will be your host. For the uninitiated, I am an evangelical Christian and been one my entire life. I assumed I was conservative until recently, until a couple years ago. And right now, I have no idea what's going on. Okay, so having said that, dear listener, you know, this is a topic that I try to stay away from for a couple reasons. One is because everybody and their mother believes that they can talk about something as complex and as with as much gravity as this topic. And for the most part, I feel like a lot of people are just playing fast and loose with it. And so I've generally stayed away from it. I will talk a little bit later about why I haven't posted in a while. Thank you guys for the emails and the texts, etc., etc. But at least for now, I guess I could say I'm back. Sit back and relax, because this might be a little bit on the longer side. We're going to be watching Ryan Grimm and his commentary in regard to the most recent information we've just found out about our dear friend, the good Dr. Fauci. Shall we? Let's check it out.
What's on your radar, Ryan?
Well, so yesterday you and I talked about the emails that from the NIH that had just been released by Republicans on the House Oversight Committee. And at the time, we were trying to figure out what was precisely new in them. But either way, they painted a damning picture of U.S. government officials wrestling with whether the novel coronavirus may have leaked out of a lab they knew they were funding, deciding that it very well may have, and then actively suppressing those questions.
Now, if you guys saw the ill-fated video I did with, I think it was the Daily Show, Jon Stewart, or Jon Stewart was a guest, whatever, and he was saying, who would have thought that the coronavirus, which originated in Wuhan, could have found its genesis at the Wuhan coronavirus lab, literally right down the street. If you guys remember, the line that we were told was it was bats. You know, they were eating that bat stew in the wet market. And that's what we were told. And anybody and everybody who was giving that explanation the side eye was immediately looked upon as a crazy conspiracy theorist, etc., etc. Yeah, y'all remember that, I'm sure.
So to spell out what actually is new here, these emails themselves and others similar to it had previously been obtained by news outlets, including The Intercept, which sued the NIH for a huge batch of documents. And the GOP actually cited us in 2 footnotes. These particular emails were first obtained by BuzzFeed and the Washington Post, but the emails were heavily redacted, making it hard to know what was being communicated. A lot of them looked just like that. But as we also know from previous reporting, Republican staff were able to view the full emails, quote, in camera, which basically means they could physically look at them but couldn't take copies with them. So what they did is they quickly took as many notes as they could. It would be better if the NIH would just release them, but this is the best we've got at this point. Now,
So, these are scientists who are supposed to work for us. They give us these heavily redacted reports when we ask for information. And, you know, these dudes are functioning like the CIA, you know, an agency that, you know, it's always one of those, hey, you know, we've got assets in different countries, and we've got agents, and we've got caseworkers and stuff in different countries. So obviously regular people can't know that because it would compromise the integrity of the work. That's kind of the line, right, in the agency. Why would you have a heavily redacted report from scientists? These aren't people doing clandestine work. These aren't people going undercover in other countries who may end up getting killed because they're undercover in some Al-Qaeda cell or an ISIS cell or Jabhat al-Nusra cell. So why, even our elected officials, by the way, we have a representative government. So when you have a representative government and elected officials get to see something on camera, take as many notes as you can. What? This, I don't know, as Delaney's saying, that makes no sense. Now Delaney's on the younger side, but I feel like she's got some wisdom. What do you think? Holy smokes.
Quick side note. It's pitiful, it's shameful that Democrats wouldn't collaborate with Republicans on this investigation in any serious way.
Holy smokes! I agree. And by the way, a lot of the anti-Trumpism that was around, especially in 2020 in regards to this stuff, I do think probably played some role in it. Because, and obviously a lot of that has to do with Trump himself and the way that he conducted his business, and he completely alienated the country. I'm not going to say he single-handedly alienated the country. All you saw on CNN, MSNBC, etc., and left-wing YouTube was the latest ridiculous tweet from Trump. Meanwhile, we had bunches of American citizens dying because they couldn't, not from Rona, but from, pesky things like diabetes and things of that nature. Instead of focusing on that, we were focusing on Trump's tweets. And so we had this bifurcated America to where it was the Crips and the Bloods, man, and we couldn't work together. So I will say I'm grateful that Mr. Biden is only doing non-divisive things like trying to enforce vaccine mandates instead of doing really horrific things like talking on Twitter. And I'm joking, but I'm not joking, because the amount of angst that Mr. Trump caused on his Twitter and then left-wing media or whatever wing media, I mean, can you really say, look, I'm a novice in this stuff, but can you really say that CNN and MSNBC, can you really say that's left-wing media? I don't know. They don't sound like any of the leftists I know, but we continue.
This shouldn't actually be partisan. It's existentially
Hold on, I can't hear a word. Okay.
Important that we get the actual truth here. It's obviously too late to stop this pandemic, but maybe not too late to stop the next one. If the NIH and Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci know more than they're telling the public, that's something that should bother anybody from either party or from no party. So what they actually found is quite a big deal. So on February 1st, Anthony Fauci, Collins, and at least 11 other scientists joined a conference call. It's February 11th, 2020. On that call, Fauci and Collins were told the virus might have leaked from the Wuhan lab and might have been genetically engineered. So some context, the day before...
I don't want to be condescending here, guys, but if you're wondering what the NIH is, you can check this out. It's the National Institutes of Health, okay? And they're a department within the Department of Health and Human Services. So when I say these people work for us and we were asking them questions, they literally work for us. They literally work for us. It's unbelievable. But did you catch that? So Fauci, I'm going to play that again.
Know more than they're telling the public, that's something that should bother anybody from either party or from no party. So what they actually found is quite a big deal. So on February 1st, Anthony Fauci, Collins, and at least 11 other scientists joined a conference call. It's February 11th, 2020. On that call, Fauci and Collins were told the virus might have leaked from the Wuhan lab and might have been genetically engineered.
Okay, so that doesn't definitively mean that that's exactly what happened, but that means that the people that were saying maybe there's something to this were not crazy. But that's how the media treated anybody and everybody who would say, well, maybe, that's it. I mean, again, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, and my channel is a very, very, very infinitesimally small channel. But the one time we did a video And it was a Jon Stewart video where they, where Stewart was just completely roasting this idea that it's impossible that the coronavirus came from the Wuhan coronavirus lab. My video was taken down. And it's the only time in MA history where any of my videos have ever been taken down. Do what you will with that, dear listener. Do what you will with that.
Some context. The day before, Fauci had been warned that it may have been a lab leak, as USA Today reported. Now, the day after the call, Dr. Jeremy Farrar sent around notes, including to Fauci and Collins, summarizing what some of the scientists had said on the call, and that's what's new in this. I want to read directly from some of this because the details are extremely important. So one scientist said he's bothered by the furin site and has a hard time explaining that as an event outside the lab, though there are possible ways in nature, but highly unlikely. So, given above, a likely explanation could be something as simple as passage SARS-CoV-2 in tissue culture on human cell lines under BSL-2 for an extended period of time, accidentally creating a virus that would be primed for rapid transmission between humans via game of furin site from tissue culture and adaptation to human ACE2 receptor via repeated passage. So I think it becomes a question of how do you put all this together? Whether you believe in this series of coincidences, what you know of the lab in Wuhan, how much could be in nature, accidental release, or natural event, I am 70-30 or 60-40.
70-30 or 60-40. This is a credentialed scientist, brilliant guy who is saying, the odds of this thing being a naturally occurring thing, I'd say 70% man-made, 30%, or 60% man-made, 40%. Those are pretty significant odds. Those are pretty significant odds, dear listener. And we were told over and over and over again that anybody who thought that way was crazy.
There's this from Dr. Bob Gary. Before I left the office for the ball, I aligned nCoV with the 96% bat CoV sequenced at Wuhan. Except for the RBD, the S proteins are essentially identical at the amino acid level, while all but the perfect insertion of 12 nucleotides that adds the furin site. S2 is over its whole length essentially identical. I really can't think of a plausible natural scenario where you get from the bat virus or one very similar to it to nCoV, where you insert exactly 4 amino acids, 12 nucleotide, that all have to be added at the exact same time to gain this function. That, and you don't change any other amino acid in S2, I just can't figure out how this gets accomplished in nature. Do the alignment of the spikes at the amino acid level, it's stunning. Of course, in the lab, it would be easy to generate the perfect 12-base insert that you wanted. Another scenario is that the progenitor of nCoV was a bat virus with the perfect furin cleavage site generated over 3 evolutionary times. In this scenario, rat G13, the WIV virus, was generated by a perfect deletion of 12 nucleotides while essentially not changing any other S2 amino acid. Even more implausible, in my opinion. That is the big if. Okay.
So that was filled with a lot of scientific jargon that, quite frankly, dear listener, I'm not familiar with. But he kept using the term perfect. And I'm sure if I was more scientifically inclined, I could make the case. But long story short, it seems to me, it's one of those situations. Encyclopedia Brown is this book, Use a Detective, I used to read a lot. And he always used to catch criminals. And they had this one crime where there was like a company pod, and then they were buying a radio tape player or something like that, and then you put all these golf balls into the big bowl, and then you fish out the number, and the person who fished out the number just happened to pull the number of his girlfriend, and everyone's like, holy smokes, what a coincidence. And it turned out Encyclopedia Brown solved the case. What those evil bastards were doing is they took the girlfriend's golf ball and they put it in a freezer, and then they dumped it in the thing, so when it was time for him to look at it, he found it because it was ice cold. because everybody knew something was up because it was just too perfect of a scenario to be a coincidence. So that to me is the analogy here. What this scientist seems to be telling us is, I don't know, bro. The 12 amino acid, the spikes, but this stuff is remaining the same. It's too perfect. It looks as if it was engineered. You'd have like 3 stages of evolution that just kind of happen, boom, immediately, out of nowhere. He's like, I don't know, bro. And then he says, I mean, of course, in a lab, it'd be simple to accomplish that. That's basically what the guy said. And I agree with Elon Musk. This little clip of Ryan Grimm here, I don't really know this fella, but he doesn't look very comfortable in what he's saying. Doesn't look very comfortable. But what can be done? What can be done? We continue.
So we know that on February 1st and 2nd, the conclusion was that the virus being engineered in the lab was plausible. Indeed, arguably more plausible than not. So later on February 2nd, Francis Collins emails Fauci and...
I like that term. I like that term. I like not going completely overboard and saying, they did this on purpose and we know definitively, yada, yada, yada. But that's how scientists are supposed to function. They don't make these grand sweeping, whatever. What he's saying is, what's more plausible than not? Or scenario A is 70 to 60 more plausible than scenario B. That is how scientists are supposed to function. All the extra stuff are for YouTubers and politicians. But scientists are supposed to deal with the raw data, just the facts, and they're supposed to be very circumspect when they communicate. This sounds like a serious scientist to me. Doesn't he sound like a serious scientist to you, dear listener? I think he does. Shout out to JV, by the way. But what a reasonable way to look at the scenario. Now, why did that have to be classified and redacted, dear listener? Dear listener, why did that very reasonable, easy to understand, at least principially to a guy like me, and then the very reasoned and, as Austin is saying, objective sort of perspective of, hey man, this looks 70-30 to me based on scenario A or scenario B. Why could that not have been played on C-SPAN or an interview with 60 Minutes? That had to be redacted. And then the second question I have is, why come out with all the aggression of going after everybody who would question the narrative, which according to this scientist at least was at least 30 to 40% probable versus 70 to 60 in the other one? Why be so aggressive against everybody? Serious question.
Colleagues, and the tide begins to turn, and you can start to see politics begin to creep in. Quote, I am coming around to the view that a natural origin is more likely. But I share your view that a swift convening of experts in a confidence-inspiring framework, WHO seems really the only option, is needed, or the voices of conspiracy will quickly dominate, doing great potential harm to science and international harmony, unquote.
Holy
so
shit!
Dr. Ron Foy-
What? Science and international harmony? That's what the guy, I promise you guys, that's what I just heard, and that's what I just saw in this highlight. Hold on.
And international harmony, unquote.
That's what he just said, bro. Check it.
Seems really the only option, is needed, or the voices of conspiracy will quickly dominate, doing great potential harm to science and international harmony, unquote.
Bro! See, guys, look. See, look, guys. One of the major problems I've had over the last year and a half, 2 years, have been people who are and one of the reasons I haven't posted in Middle America in quite some time. And I don't know if I'm going to keep posting. We'll see what happens. People who are completely unqualified to comment on a situation begin making these expert analyses of things that they're not qualified to talk about. If you're a scientist and you're a trained scientist, your expertise is the scientific method. And whatever discipline within the rubric of science, whether it's geology, astronomy, epidemiology, virology, that is your lane. It is not for you as a scientist to step out of that lane and start talking about international harmony. That's not your job. That's not why we pay you. You know whose job it is to worry about international harmony? The people in the world. It's our job. Let us worry about international harmony. I think we can do a good job of that. We don't need special schooling for that. You got sent to school and you're getting a government check from all of us to do science, not to worry about international harmony. That's not your job, bro. Wow. And then harm to science? How can science be harmed? How in the world? And then who would be harming it? And I just want to take a time out, dear listener. Because, again, my people are the evangelical right, and, that's where I was born and raised and all the rest of it. This email and nothing that we have read so far disproves science. So I still like the phrase, trust the science. The science is not the problem. The discipline of, please hear me, dear right-wing evangelical. Science is not the problem here. If these guys would have been able to have a rigorous discourse and a back and forth, and one scientist says, hey, here are my claims, and here's what I have, and here's what it looks like to me, just based on the scientific method and the data we have at this point, and I disagree with your conclusion here, and here, and here's why. Then you have other scientists doing the exact same thing in full view of the American people. If we had a scenario like that, it would be great. That is ultimately what science is. This right here is not science, guys. This is not science. Let's say it this way. This is not science's fault, if that makes any sense. We can still believe in science. This is human interference within violating the terms of science, because now you've got scientists who are trying to get outside of their lane and be politicians, and you've got politicians who get outside their lane and try to be scientists. So I just want to make the point. That's the problem here, not science. We continue.
So Dr. Ron Fortier sent an email making the same point, saying that, quote, further debate about such accusations would unnecessarily distract top researchers from their active duties and do unnecessary harm to science in general and science in China in particular, unquote.
How can you harm science? An accusation that might have been engineered and released into the environment by humans, accidental or intentional, would need to be supported by strong data beyond a measurable doubt. I don't know, dear listener, but did what they say earlier kind of like, was that strong data? We had these 12 amino acids that seem to be, that like basically account for like 3 cycles of evolution that happened in one fell swoop. And again, I don't want to violate what I just said. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. All I'm saying is the scientists that said, hey, this looks like 70-30, 60-40. To me, anyway, that seemed like strong data if I'm interpreting it correctly, right? But now we're backtracking, and now we're saying, well, you need to have a strong case, and we can't let this out because it's going to distract. First of all, how would a quote accusation, and I don't like the term accusation, how about the term hypothesis? Because again, accusation is one of these political like media terms, okay? Scientists don't deal or traffic in accusation. Like for example, if you, here's a perfect example. If you commit a murder, right? And your DNA is spilled all over the place. And they bring the scientist up as an expert witness. You know what's going to happen? All the scientist is going to do is say, yeah, that was Joe Schmo's DNA. What he's not going to do is look at the jury and say, therefore you should find him guilty. The expert scientist witness is not going to do that. All his job is get up on the stand and say, yeah, that was his DNA. I'm an expert. I've been trained. I went to school for 25 years for it. And in my expertise, that's that guy's DNA. That's it. It is the lawyer's job to make the accusation. Do you see? So the scientist wouldn't even be, quote, accusing anyone of anything. The scientist would be telling us, look, man, here's the data, and here's the mathematical probability, in our view, that it could be man-made versus natural, and then vice versa. They don't make accusations. They just come with the data. It is the job of the media and the job of the American and Chinese and global people to decide whether or not they're going to interpret that data in an accusatory fashion. But once again, this is scientists getting outside of their lane. And I'm probably talking over my pay grade, because at this point I still don't understand how it could harm scientists and how it could distract them. The only way that would distract them is if somebody from the outside was telling them that it is their job to accuse or excuse these folks in Wuhan. Listen, if you're on a jury and you heard that one of these expert witnesses was trying to accuse or the defendant or defend the defendant, you're probably going to throw all that out, right? Because you're going to say, this has nothing to do with anything as far as objective truth, because this guy has been compromised.
2 days later, Fauci and Collins got a draft article being prepared by the scientists called The Proximal Origins of SARS-CoV-2. The draft paper is still secret, and all we have is Fauci's reply, which seems to be a scientific version of WTF. He typed 2 question marks, followed by, quote, serial passage in ACE2 transgenic mice, unquote. So now the logical conclusion here is that the paper included serial passage as a possibility, and Fauci was flagging it as noteworthy one way or another. That theory does appear in the final version of the Nature letter. A hypothetical generation of SARS-CoV-2 by cell culture or animal passage would have required prior isolation of a progenitor virus with very high genetic similarity, which has not been described. Subsequent generation of a polybasic cleavage site would have then required repeated passage in cell culture or animals with ACE2 receptors similar to those of humans, but such work has also not previously been described, unquote. That's how they dismiss it at the end. If Fauci or Collins made substantive edits, this appears to be where they put their pen the heaviest, allowing animal passage to be raised, but immediately dismissing it as having not previously been described. So Republicans also released an email from Jeremy Farrar saying, Eddie Holmes, 64 lab, I am 50-50. So on February 4th, the day they got the paper, key scientists still believed the lab theory was plausible, which makes it impossible for Fauci to claim something major changed between the 1st and the 4th. Francis Collins, in an email, then called the paper a, quote, very thoughtful analysis, arguing against engineering, but repeated passage is still an option. In other words, they're arguing that it wasn't deliberately constructed in a lab, but an experiment that involved repeated passage between animals was still possible. From there, the trail goes cold in the emails, and the paper that is eventually published rejects the idea that it originated in a lab. Fauci cited the paper in tamping down the theory.
Peter Daszak, who you communicated with privately, and other members of the scientific community that wrote opinion pieces for Nature. 5 of them signed a paper for Nature, an opinion piece. 17 signed a paper that called it conspiracy theory, the idea that the virus could have originated in the lab. Do you think words like conspiracy theory should be in a scientific paper?
Okay, this is what I was talking about. Like, again, what? You guys are scientists, bro. Stay in your lane. Let me do that. Let YouTube do that. What's her name? Rachel Maddow do that. Not you guys, man. You guys are scientists. Here's poor Delaney talking about. Delaney, you are not an idiot to believe Dr. Fauci. anybody with any modicum of intelligence and humility will say, that guy is a doctor. He's been in school longer than I've been alive, and in your case, probably 3 times your age in school and etc. and in practice. It is a wise thing to listen to people who have specialized in a certain area. That's wise to do. Now that you've gotten more information about this guy, you're saying he's not trustworthy. Also wise. You're always supposed to operate with the information you know, because you're not God, so you're not omniscient. You don't know everything. So your decisions always have to be informed by the most up-to-date and accurate information that you can ascertain. So when you ascertain the information about the guy, now you've adjusted your perspective, which is exactly how science is supposed to work. And if these people operated like you, we'd be in a lot better shape, and probably hundreds of thousands of people would still be alive. Who knows? We continue.
Senator, I never used that word when I was referring to it. You're distorting.
He didn't say you used the word. He said, should terms like conspiracy... I'm raising my voice now. What he said, Dr. Fauci, was that should words like conspiracy theory be used in a scientific document, especially documents that you guys turn around and redact and hide from the public, thereby validating conspiracy theories, whether they're true or not. We continue.
Virtually everything.
Did you communicate with the 5 scientists who wrote the opinion piece in Nature where they were describing, there's no way this could have come from the lab?
That was not me. What I did.
Did you talk with any of those scientists privately?
You keep distorting the truth. It is stunning.
It is stunning? You know, in the agency, they teach you diversion. A lot of people mistakenly believe they teach you how to beat lie detector tests. That's untrue. But they do school you in certain diversion tactics. And I wonder about this guy, because that's what he's doing right now. It's stunning. Again, brother, I can tell it from here, from YouTube world. He didn't say that you did that, bro. What he's saying is that something that scientists are supposed to be doing?
So while the mainstream media blackballed the topic, people kept pushing. Francis Collins in April emailed Anthony Fauci a link to a segment by Bret Baier, who noted that people still wondered about that lab. Of course, one thing Collins could have done is actively explored the question and searched for truth. But by April, Fauci and Collins had settled on their story, and Fauci told him to ignore it and assured him it would all go away. Quote, "I would not do anything about this right now. It is a shiny object that will go away in times." That was not true.
Right. No, he was wrong.
It went away for a long time.
Brilliant political instincts from Dr. Fauci. No, it's that absolutely did not turn out to be the case, and partially because the evidence just, despite their best efforts, I mean, I think one of the things you pointed out is that Fauci cited that paper to tamp down on the theory, which was, of course, the point, but it is a completely corrupt process, literally manipulating scientific papers for political ends. And that Collins email that was just up, he talks about this is a destructive conspiracy theory that threatens international harmony. And so you see that their motivations are not purely scientific, as Dr. Fauci would have you believe. There are all kinds of politics. And the other thing I would note is that date, February 4th. February 4th, as you said, what changed between the 1st and the 4th? We don't know. It seems likely that nothing did. But February 4th, 2020, February 4th, 2022 is the day that the Beijing Olympics begin. So 2 years to the day, we're getting international harmony.
Exactly. That's
so
a good point.
I found the sort of that interesting in and of itself, because here we are. But that everything you just broke down, I thought was really helpful.
And what's obnoxious about this whole conversation is how partisan it has become, and needlessly so, because there's nothing structural or fundamental.
Guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody and everything in between. Here's why I have a real problem with this, okay? Here is why I have a serious problem with this whole situation. Because, for full disclosure, my wife and I got vaccinated. We had a family trip that was scheduled, and we have a ex-family. I just say it this way: my ex is one of these, I'm going to trust God, I don't believe in vaccines, yada 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 situations. She goes and gets herself infected, exposes herself to COVID. Anyway, long story short, my kids got COVID. And our whole entire household ended up getting COVID. We also have extended family members in the red zone. I'm talking about age and, health-wise, who are in the red zone. And once again, I heard the vaccine is going to do XYZ PLMNOQ thing. And all the other stuff. And all the crazy nonsense that you see on Facebook. Where, again, uncredentialed people who have no background in any field whatsoever are making these claims and objective statements that have no basis in fact. And you come to them and you say, hey, this isn't it. This person's not a qualified spokesperson. They don't know what they're talking about. And they say, well, who are your sources? And you say, well, I've got the CDC. I've got all these government agencies. And they go, oh, please. Do you believe them? You see what's happening? The truth is there somewhere. And I do believe, still, to this day, that if you're in the red zone, whether by age or you've got health maladies, especially in the respiratory category, for example, if you're morbidly obese, I mean, I'm just saying that because I live in Maine, and I'm not saying it to be funny, I do believe those individuals should be vaccinated. But how do you retort when they say, oh, come on, you can't believe the government? That's my problem with what just got released here, because you have just validated that argument. And those people are still wrong, I believe. And I believe that many thousands and many tens of thousands of Americans have died unnecessarily due to our distrust of these, quote, authoritative sources. And we ought to be able to trust people from the NIH and the CDC and a guy like Dr. Fauci. By the way, how in the world? So I understood why, he still kept his job or his post in the Trump administration, because this really popped in an election cycle and Trump was more worried about that. But why is he still around? And why is he still able to speak authoritatively to this? Why is Biden allowing this guy to still be around? And that's just one of those, would Bernie have gotten rid of Fauci? I don't know. But what I would love in the next election cycle, or even in the midterms, is somebody to say, I am going to support an investigation of this guy. I want to know what he knew, how much he knew, and what his hand was in gain of function research, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But my point is, all of my, quote, extreme right friends, people I love, who were touting the most insane theories, because remember, you had QAnon, right? During the election thing went off, and all the QAnoners basically went into the whole vaccine conversation. And again, even me characterizing that way is not completely fair, but do you understand what I'm saying? The people who were in serious danger, who could have stood to benefit highly from the vaccine and distancing, etc., because of how blatantly and consistently this man lies and these departments lie, believe these insane conspiracy theories, and because of that, they're paying the price. They're paying the price. if you get a vaccine and you're older, does that completely protect you from contracting the virus? No. But it can severely, every healthcare official I've talked to, it can severely limit the severity of what happens to you when you do contract the virus. But if you're scared of the virus because your friend from Facebook posted this post from WeKnowTheTruth.org, I also understand why. And can you blame them after you see this? Then there is Facebook and Twitter and how these various groups have dealt with dissenting voices. And I'm specifically talking about the whole Joe Rogan, McCullough, Malone situation. It's mind-boggling to me. First of all, let me say this. I'm a big believer. YouTube is a private company. I'm a guest on their platform. YouTube has afforded me a platform and things of that nature that 20, 30 years ago, you would have had to spend your entire life savings to buy an agent on to get, whatever. So I'm not one of these people that gets angry at YouTube for pulling my video. I allude to the fact that they pulled one of my coronavirus videos last year. I just pointed that out to set up what I'm going to talk about here, but I don't resent YouTube for doing that. It's their platform. They can do what they want. The other thing that people have to realize about these horrible, terrible, evil big tech companies is that if you are somewhat consider yourself to be an ethical person, okay? If you consider yourself to be an ethical person, and you believe that you've created a monster, you've opened Pandora's box with social media, and your platform, you truly believe, is being used to disseminate false information that results in the death of people, you are absolutely going to take steps to reverse that. So, with the quote censorship or the quote unquote violation of people's free speech, I don't have a problem with that. That's Facebook, that's YouTube, that's their place. It's happened to me. The Facebook, listen, all through 2020, Facebook pretty much put us on probation, and literally every single post that got approved on the Middle America page, that got posted on the Middle America page, even if you just said, "Hi, I'm new here," literally had to be manually approved. Now we've got like 1,200 people on that forum, so you can imagine. You can imagine what that did. My solution was to just anoint like an entire cadre of moderators, and they took care of it. Shout out to Matt. Shout out to all those people who faithfully worked on that. But we literally had to do that during the election year. And it was, would I say it was biased? Of course it was biased. We even tested it. It was biased. But again, it's their platform. It's not my platform. It's not my platform, guys. YouTube doesn't have to monetize this video. They're under no obligation to do that. That's their platform. They get to do it. Here's the problem with that, though. Here's the problem with that. Not everybody looks at it that way. And not everybody engages it that way. So you know what happened? All through 2020, you had all these rabid Trump supporters who were cycling this QAnon stuff. And Facebook banned people left and right. So you know what happened? They all coagulated on this platform called Parler. Now, I have screenshots of what these people were talking about January 6th. And I have screenshots. I actually posted a video about this, where they were literally planning and organizing. And Linwood was like, "All right, Patriots, it's time to put your money and your blood, etc. on the line." Literally said that, right? You know, it's early Christianity was getting persecuted on all sides. We got driven into the catacombs, and Christianity flourished. And then we got the power of the sword since the 4th century, and holy shit, right? When we were shoved underground, Christianity exploded. When we were getting chewed up in the arena, Christianity exploded. When we were getting crucified on the side of the street, Christianity exploded. When you try to squeeze out the message of a group of people by these draconian, lazy, sort of scorched earth tactics. See, this is the problem with YouTube and Facebook, etc. They'll say, oh, we're not a monopoly. We're not a monopoly. There are other platforms, so you can't break us up because we're not a monopoly. Cool, I agree. But they function as if these people had no other alternative. Guess what? They had an alternative. And they all congealed on Parler, and then we saw what happened on January 6th. Here's my point. Why couldn't you take that as a learning moment, big tech, and say, maybe this concept of just completely deplatforming these folks isn't going to work because they can have other areas. The problem is now we can push them into a Parler-like context where there will be literally zero dissenting voices, and it'll be a complete 360-degree cycle and circle of toxicity with no intermediating voice. So now you got a whole bunch of people who don't trust the government, who are looking at the side eye at Fauci. Fauci already admitted that he lied. He said, I didn't tell him to wear a mask because I wanted to make sure I prioritize the healthcare workers. So you already lied, bro. So now you got people saying, oh, okay, well, now Facebook is in on it. Facebook is in on the conspiracy. I don't believe that Zuckerberg or whoever owns YouTube, Google, whoever owns these people, I don't believe that they were in the back office with these scientists and with Fauci. I don't believe that's what happened. I believe that they were going off the data that all of us had. And because they went on that data, they said that's not true. But Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Here's the thought. How about instead of deplatforming a McCullough or a Malone, Dr. Malone was the guy that supposedly invented the mRNA vaccine. I've been doing some research on it, and I don't think it's completely accurate. The way that he spoke, it's as if he single-handedly invented the mRNA. That's not what happened. And in my very, very little knowledge of science, scientists work as a team. They make all their accomplishments in a team, but that's neither here nor there. But Twitter, instead of deplatforming this guy, why not get a scientist with equal or within the ballpark qualifications, and on Malone's website or Malone's Twitter account, you superimpose a video of this virologist or epidemiologist refuting what he said, and then you give Malone, because it's your platform, so superimpose the video saying, hey, everybody that's visiting this page, I just want you to know this guy was wrong here, 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 and here. He took a USA Today article and he quoted out of context, okay? And this is what happened, yada, yada, yada. And then give Dr. Malone an opportunity to either say, yep, my bad, I was wrong, or to say, no, that guy's full of shit. And if he says that guy's full of shit, how about Twitter? You host a debate between Dr. Maloney and your guy. And then you simulcast it. You say, look, you guys have been following this. There's been a real conflict. So what we're going to do at, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, whatever, we're going to host a debate between Dr. Malone and Dr. Kabuli-Boo. Okay? And then you, dear listener in Twitterland, you can make an informed decision. Do you see? Why not do that? Nope, we're going to deplatform him. Then guess where he goes? He goes to Joe Rogan's show. And by the way, dear listener, for all you beautiful people who believe that Joe Rogan is some maverick or whatever, free thinker, Joe Rogan is owned, it works for Spotify. They cut his checks, and Spotify is owned by Google, the same group that owns YouTube. Okay? And then the superstructure is Alphabet, is a group that owns Google. Okay? So when YouTube says, we're not going to stand for this, and they deplatform Rogan, but Spotify still has him up, think. But when you deplatform these people who are credentialed, I don't know whether or not Malone is crazy as a doctor or McCullough. I do know that Mr. McCullough is heavily credentialed and a heavily published individual. I also know that he has said some pretty questionable things and said a couple things that are just factually untrue based on his religious biases, abortions cause cancer, etc., etc. And I'm the most pro-life individual you know. Trust me, I've paid prices for being pro-life. But it's not true. Abortions don't cause cancer. But we're digressing. My point is, you deplatform these people, you shut them up, you marginalize them, whatever. All it does is it sends everybody, not only does it confirm conspiracy theories, but once again, it coagulates a group of people into a toxic echo chamber where they will never be able to hear the truth. Furthermore, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Does Dr. Fauci, does Fauci have a Twitter account? Let me see. I'm like literally Googling this in real time. I want to see if Dr. Fauci has a Twitter account. Well, there's an Anthony Fauci fan club, which is weird. That's very strange to me. That's probably set up by Mr. Fauci. Okay. So here's the State Department doing this Ask Dr. Fauci thing and whatever. I don't think Fauci doesn't have a Twitter account. But here's my point. How come the people that were parroting these lies, like the NIH, how come there's no checks and balances for them? How come you guys aren't saying, hey, these guys have given out false information or withheld pertinent information, right? It seems that you're only targeting a certain group of people, which again fuels the conspiracy theories, which again makes people who are vulnerable and should be vaccinated vaccine conscious or wary, and then they end up dying for it. These draconian, yes, fascistic, remember everybody was worried about fascism back in the day? These tactics where you just slash and burn and say, no, you can't be on our platform. Why can't we have open debate about this? Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. It's not going well. This is not good. This is not good. And I understand. I just found out that my brother died. Oh my God, Candy, I'm so sorry. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. But I have... Give me a second, guys. I'm really sorry to hear that, Candy. But I have a serious question. And this is probably where some of you guys are going to sign off and say Vin's lost the plot. Why is nobody talking about prosecuting this guy? I'm specifically talking about Fauci. How is the NIH up to just now on their Twitter account? They have a Ask Dr. Fauci Q&A question thingamajiggy, and this dude is smiling and all the rest of it. Meanwhile, we got people losing family members all over the place. And he's just out there smiling, doing all this nonsense. Why isn't anybody talking about prosecuting this guy? If it can be found that he took part in this stuff and withheld serious information from the American people or had a hand in it, or then put out a counter narrative that was not factual. That's something I don't understand. How he's able to keep his job, how he's able to still strut about like nothing is wrong. I don't understand that. The man has absolutely zero accountability. And that's one of the things that completely confused me about the Biden administration. Biden, y'all thought, you thought that he hired that black lady. He hired Kamala because he was all progressive and all the rest of it. Nah, you see who's in front of the camera all the time talking to Charlemagne, talking to Good Morning America, all this stuff, and getting completely roasted. It's Kamala. He put that lady up there to be his human shield. That man is not talking to anybody, not doing interviews. Why don't you do an interview with Charlemagne? Why are you sending Kamala over there to do the interview with Charlemagne? You sending Kamala over there on Good Morning America, all this stuff, to get shot to death over your I'll say it this way: Biden's methodology in handling this pandemic is leaves much to be desired. And I will say about Biden the same thing that I've said about Trump. We're not in their position. There's 320 plus million people in America. Extremely difficult and complex situation, especially with the information we have now. I mean, so I'm not gonna go too hard on the president, but holy smokes, it seems to me that whether it's the border crisis or the pandemic, he's always sending out Kamala, and she's always getting sliced and diced in the media. I actually cried when I found out Fauci spread the lie that HIV is transmitted skin to skin and not through fluid. So many people died alone without so much as a hug. That can't be right. Did he really do that? Jesus. Let me see. Did he really do that? I'll have to confirm that. I mean, I can't confirm or deny that he said that. Yeah, if you've got actual video of him saying that, then yeah, I mean, look, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. Fauci's wife at that NHA Department of Bioethics. That's why there's no investigation. Are you kidding me? No. Guys, I'm finding this out real time. Hold on. Did he really? Is she really? That she's the head of bioethics over there? What's her name? Is it Christine Grady? Oh my God! AP News says it. False. The COVID. Yeah, she is. This is the AP right here, guys. Grady is the chief of bioethics at the NIH Clinical Center. She is. Here it is right here. Holy shit. So the chief of bioethics. That's how bioethics, but you guys know this. It's the moral implications of science and scientific discoveries. The chief is Fauci's. And this brings me, dear listener, this brings me, dear listener, to the reason, hey, Amy Lee Forever says, I'll just say there's loads of requests for verification of Fauci's actions where it's being sent from many sides. He's not going to end up without repercussions. Inshallah. Inshallah, as my Muslim friends say. But, dear listener, my daughter's a screenwriter. She's an author as well as a screenwriter. And one of my policies as a parent is I'm never going to bullshit my kids, right? So, like, for example, we're going to Florida, and my two sons said that they were going to make the high school football team. I said, you boys ain't making no football team down there. Them boys would run right over you. You probably wouldn't even qualify for water boy. I don't lie to my kids. I don't tell them that they can do anything they want and all the rest of it. I'm horribly realistic with my kids. My kids are extremely talented in other areas. My son is literally the CEO of one of the small businesses we opened up last year, and he's opening up another one like literally as we speak. He was downstairs yesterday 10 hours working on setting up his own business. I said, bro, that's your thing. So my daughter's an author. She's already written a full book, like front to back, whole 9 yards. I'm talking to a editor. We're working on her marketing plan. She's also trying to screenwrite. She's trying to convert her books to movies, so she's screenwriting it. So yesterday, she asked my opinion on something. And I said, sweetheart, that right there is a dumb idea. I said, nobody's going to believe that. That's just no. That's lazy writing. You got to go back to the lab and do something else, man, because that's not going to work. And the way I teach my kids, my kids are allowed to disagree with me, and they're allowed to disagree with me stridently. So she said, "You don't know what you're talking about. You've never written a book, blah blah blah." So we went back and forth for an hour, okay? But eventually we came to a compromise and yada yada yada. Long story short, here's where I'm going with this, guys. The head of bioethics at the NIH is married to Dr. Anthony Fauci. What? Huh? And we're just like that. You cannot. What Shorty said, the truth is stranger than fiction. What if my daughter would have written up a dystopian sci-fi horror fantasy about America and a pandemic, and Fauci, who is the bad guy in every universe, in every possible universe, and she wrote that the head of bioethics at the NIH was married to the guy? I'd have said, come on, honey, that's lazy writing. Nobody's going to believe that. It's a joke. This is insane. And these people are doing it right in front of us. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Okay, so Mechanic, you sent a link on Twitter. Let me see if video, surfaces of Fauci warning household contact with AIDS patient could put kids at risk. Warning that close contact with already infected AIDS could result in infection. Fauci speculates, if the close contact of a child is a household contact, perhaps there will be a certain number of cases of individuals who just living with and in close contact with someone with AIDS or at risk of AIDS, who does not necessarily have to have intimate sexual contact or share a needle, but just ordinary close contact that one sees in normal interpersonal relationships. Holy shit. That's just wrong. My best friend Tristan, rest in peace to the homie. My best friend Tristan, who taught me how to play baseball down there in Florida, and we were bosses, y'all. We swept the entire division. It was a completely stacked team. He came to me one day and said, bro, I gotta tell you something. I said, what's good, Tris? He said, look, if you tell me, we still be my friend. And I said, I love you, bro. I don't care what happens. We're gonna be boys to the end. And I kept my promise. He said, if I tell you something, don't tell anybody. I said, Tris, what is it? He said, my mom has AIDS. First, he said, my mom is sick. I said, so? He said, my mom has AIDS. So we're on the couch crying or whatever. My mother's a registered nurse. I did not tell her. I went over there just like normal. I hugged Patty just like normal. Patty took my mom aside and then told her 2 weeks later, something like that. My mother went crazy. Blah, 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 blah. Don't you understand your own mortality? And, but my mother was a registered nurse. So she understood. She said, baby, if you have a cut or anything like that, come home. But do not treat that woman like a leper. So Patty started coming to church with us. And my mom did the right thing. Now, I suppose you could forgive Fauci, but he's just like, it looked like he was just speculating out of thin air, not realizing the consequences and ramifications. Why is this guy, he just needs to go, man. He just needs, anyway. So anyway, guys, that's one of the reasons I haven't really been posting a lot. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to come here and say this guy's right, this guy's wrong, this guy's what I would love, and you know what, maybe we'll be able to get this. What I would love is if Joe Rogan would get Malone, McCullough versus two mainstream doctors who disagree. And I would love for like a 4-hour jousting session for 5 days, where they just go at it and stop and explain to regular common people what the hell they're talking about and translate for us. I would love it if they would do that. That would be so impactful and healthy for our country. But at this point, guys, even if you're a Joe Rogan fan, you have to admit he's only airing out one side of this discussion. And to me, that's just as toxic as what Twitter and Facebook and CNBC is doing. Why these sides are obsessed with only telling one side of the story and not having and demonizing the other side. Man, get these people in a room in front of the American people. We may not have the specialty in the education. We're not dumb, though. We're not dumb. And I think if we were able to look at these guys interface with each other and go at it, by the end of it, all of us would be able to come to a pretty decent conclusion. And you know what? If these people agreed on something and turned to the camera at the end of the debates and said, okay, this is what we do agree on, though. If you're 65 plus, etc., if you're morbidly obese, if you have respiratory issues, yeah, all four of us would say you should get vaccinated. There would be thousands and hundreds of thousands of new vaccinations tomorrow. Okay. All right. Having said that, dear listener, he did have Sanjay Gupta on, who is on the other side of the issue. I agree, but I'm not sure that Sanjay is an epidemiologist or a virologist. You see what I'm saying? He's a neurosurgeon. Sanjay's a neurosurgeon, and he's smart, but he is not an expert in this field. What I want is McCullough, Malone, get a top-tier mainstream epidemiologist and a top-tier mainstream virologist, and have the four of those guys go at it, because that's their discipline. That's what I would love to see happen. And I do think it can happen. Somebody start a hashtag and promote that debate. We had how many, you know, guys, you remember 2020. Look how much we had to endure those ridiculous debates. Tulsi Gabbard wasn't in half of them. Bernie was horrible. Like, these ridiculous debates over the presidency. Ridiculous. We had to endure Biden. And look, I'm not going to disrespect or dishonor Biden, but can we say at minimum, he was not at the top of his game as far as being a speaker goes. But all the major networks were giving us hours and hours of this stuff. Why can't we have one of these debates once a week on, I guarantee you the ratings would be way higher than the nonsense that we saw before. All right. And Mech, I don't want Joe Rogan debating any doctor on anything. He's not qualified, man. He's not qualified. So Joe Rogan can't debate anybody. I just saw a clip of Joe Rogan where he made some factual statement or whatever about corona or the vaccine or whatever. And I think it was like viral load or something like that. And they were going back and forth. The guy was like, nah, man, you're wrong. So then Joe goes, Jamie, get that up for me on Google. So then Jamie gets it up on Google. And then he was wrong. And so the guy goes, yeah, see right there, you're 4 times more likely. And then Joe goes, well, I mean, what do they know? So he's not qualified to have the debate. He can moderate the debate, but he's not qualified to have the debate. And I'm not mad at Joe Rogan. I'm just saying that anybody who thinks he's some radical free thinker, he's owned by Alphabet, okay? And he's only doing one side. And then when he gets called out on his bullshit, when he's wrong, instead of just saying, I was wrong, he does that nonsense. Problem is the medical world isn't 50-50, it's 95-5. It's not equal when 19 out of the 20 doctors are pro-vaccines. I agree, Chris. That's what I'm saying. That's my point. My point is I'm inclined to go with the mainstream view on these things, right? What I'm saying is Rogan gets these guys who are credentialed, who are highly published. You cannot compromise. You can't disparage their bona fides. And they get on his show for 3 hours straight unchallenged by people in the same field of discipline. So what I'm saying is get 2 really, really good doctors that deal with the mainstream view and have them go in there and annihilate them if it's that simple. That's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying that these guys should get on there. And shit, if the doctor wants to get on there and say, listen, you guys, would you agree, Dr. Malone, that you're in the 5 percentile versus us at the 90? Would you agree with that? Yes. Yeah, that's true. But that doesn't go out on the 3-hour monologue with Rogan. But if you actually had a spirited debate, then you'd be able to do that. You see what I'm saying? Fauci doesn't admit he's wrong. You're right. Brent, you're right. And we are much more in danger. Well, I don't really know right now because people are taking what Joe Rogan has to say more seriously than what Fauci has to say. And that scares me, and it should scare everybody. So anyway, much love to you guys. Much love to everybody. I love you, candy apples, man. That was a gut punch to hear about your brother. Very sorry about that. Keep your head up. Guys, I'm not qualified to give you any medical advice. All I can tell you is look at the facts the best you possibly can. It's always a good idea to stay healthy. It's always a good idea to have a little bit of a workout regimen. To eat right as best you can, although eating right sometimes can be very expensive. I was not born in this country, guys. But I love this country. And everybody in my immediate family has paid very steep prices for this country. I've also been around the world. And I hate when people die in bunches unnecessarily. Betty White died at 99, and I smiled. I said, she lived a dream, she lived a full life, and she was loved by practically 10% of the entire world. What a run she had. So other people in our country and on our planet that are dying way too early. Whether it's misinformation, disinformation, the arrogance of a few scientists who are playing politics and politicians who are playing scientists and media companies that are playing both when they shouldn't. I hate seeing people die unnecessarily. So I can't tell you guys what to do with your body. I can't tell you guys what to do with this Omicron or whatever other variant's about to come up. For as long as this video stays up, all I can tell you to do is be safe, be healthy. Another thing I'll say is please, please, please try to consider what your speech and your actions and the decisions that you make for your body affect those around you. Please have that in your algorithm of factors when you make decisions. On the other hand, look at what your brothers and sisters in this country and on this planet have to deal with. Maybe we should be less harsh in judging people. Maybe we should be less harsh. Maybe we should all be less dismissive of people. Maybe we should be slow to speak and quicker to listen to each other. Because if there's one thing that this video has taught us, is that we're all we got, y'all. We're all we got. Literally. Shout out to Candy Apples. Send me an email, candyapplesvidinstory@gmail.com. I want to send you a shirt. I want to give you something. You're my sister. I'm really sorry about your brother. And my love language is gifts. So I want to be able to give you something. So I don't know. Send me your address. I'll send you a shirt. Promise we're not trying to stalk you. Just want to do something for you. I love you guys. I really, really do. I really do love you guys. And I know you guys love me. I got to get out of here. I'm going to spend some time with my girl. And I commend the same to you. In the meantime, love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.